And welcome back to Innovation Unplugged, where we spotlight visionaries reshaping enterprise and technology. I'm Jim Brismitzis, your host, and in this episode, we are honored to be joined by Glenn Lurie, a telecom veteran whose leadership helped bring the first iPhone to AT&T and led to the rise of AT&T Mobility, and later served as the CEO of Insynchronous, and is now today a general partner at Stormbreaker Ventures. From pioneering mobile services, launching Cricket Wireless, into investing in next-gen connectivity at Stormbreaker, Glenn's career spans the major shifts in mobile IoT and edge technology. Today, we're going to explore his journey from the phone line to the frontier tech. And so with that, Glenn, thank you again for offering your time to be with us today. We really appreciate it.
Jim, appreciate you asking and glad to be here.
Awesome. So, Glenn, I know you get asked quite a bit and you've told this story quite a bit, but it would be great to have you talk about how instrumental you were to negotiating the first iPhone deal, certainly here in the United States, arguably probably even the world, and how transformative that was, not just for AT&T, but in terms of the whole new ecosystem that smartphones enabled.
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, it was a wonderful time. I was very fortunate. It was right after Singular Wireless bought the old AT&T Wireless in 2004, and I was asked to join the Singular senior team. And Stan Sigmund, who was our CEO, and Ralph De La Vega, our CEO, asked me to come in and work on and lead that deal. I give them a lot of credit because before that, we launched a phone that you've never heard of. And it was the first time that Steve Jobs allowed the iTunes client outside of one of his devices, and it was called the Rocker. And it only allowed 20 songs. You can imagine we didn't sell many, and you can imagine that didn't go well. It was built by Motorola. Right. And Ralph, to his credit, created a very strong relationship with Steve. When Steve was making his decisions around wanting to get in the phone business, he talked to all four carriers. By the way, there were four carriers back then, as we all know. Yeah. And we really thought up front that he was looking for a wholesale deal, like an Apple Wireless kind of MVNO deal. And so I was running that part of the business at that time for Singular, so I was asked to go to the first meeting. And after the first meeting with Stan and Ralph and I, they asked me to take point. And that started a very long negotiation with a lot of people. It was a team effort. Yeah, talking with them almost every day, whether Steve or Eddie or Tim, and who obviously, it was great learning for everybody involved. Now, the one thing that we didn't know, and what scared us the most, is that it'd be a huge success. And we all know what happened. It is a huge success. And we were the first carrier with a 3-year exclusive to carry that in the U.S., and we were the first in the world. And we had learned a lot from the 2G device that came out in 2007. But really, for me, looking back, the game changer was obviously the App Store. Yeah. That came out with the 3G device in mid-2008. That changed everything. That just showed the world what that device in your hand, having a computing device with an open browser. Because remember, back in those days, we had WAP browsers and all kinds of interesting. It really wasn't a smartphone. It was just make a call. Now, obviously, the smartphones become more important than your wallet, more important than your keys, more important than about anything you hold in your hand because it carries your whole life. Yeah. And seeing that change come about was amazing. To watch it and live it and be in the middle of it was just truly amazing.
Now, going back in time just a little bit, had we known what we know now about how transformative the App Store was and the experiences that these devices, now afford us, would you have done anything different in terms of onboarding that? Because arguably, a lot of the value that's been created from that smartphone ecosystem largely has been in the hands of the iPhone makers and app builders and such, and the telcos have sort of been left out of that. Would you have done anything different looking back?
I don't know that we could have, Jim. At the time, you think about where we were. I mean, I joked around with people for many years when I made speeches, and you say, well, if I would have asked you in 2004 what you want in your iPhone, you would have no idea. Because you have no idea what it could do. It was transformative I'd argue it changed society. And let's not forget, there are those guys over at Google that did a pretty amazing thing with their Android and their App Store. So I don't want to leave that out. I mean, that all just made our expectations just kept changing in front of our eyes as we had more apps. As all of a sudden, you joke around, you no longer carry a plane ticket, right? You no longer, think about all the things you can do. And by the way, I would argue your point is excellent because really the top 7 companies in the world, or we can argue who those are. We all know the Netflix and the Amazons. they wouldn't be where they are without the carriers and the carriers investment and the apps and the devices. A lot of people would argue they've made more money. I think that's not really much of an argument. They have.
Yeah.
And I give a lot of credit to today, the three carriers still investing, still moving the ball forward. They're investing billions of dollars every year. But that's one of the reasons why, as we get into discussing innovation that you work on and I work on every day with Stormbreaker, it's so needed for the industry, right? Yeah. It's needed. And that's part of the problem. The carriers have to make a fair return on their investments, and others are making a bigger return on the backs of the carriers. And I think that's something that we all should be nervous about, because obviously this runs our life. It runs our society. And we've been leading it from the beginning. And there's debates whether we'll be leading it for much longer based upon the pressure being put on the three carriers.
Totally. And in that realm, the business models have been changing so drastically, even since the introduction of the iPhone to where we are today, right? There's a big push for more and more MVNOs. T-Mobile's pickup of Ryan's company, Mint Mobile, is a great example of that. And you kind of pioneered some of that earlier on with Cricket. What was your goal with Cricket then?
Yeah, at Cricket, the goal was to bring in a flanker brand that we could do different things than you do behind an AT&T brand. And by the way, I was always a believer in prepaid was just another way to pay, right? Early prepaid, go back track phone days and all those days. People, it was you didn't have credit, right? And you went and got a phone, and you bought. People might remember this. We used to buy cards with minutes and all those things.
Yep.
Really, what prepaid developed into was another way to pay, and that was where our brains were. Ralph and at the time and others, where we really wanted to bring in. We actually started a brand called AO Wireless, and then made the decision. Remember, Cricket only had half the country. Made a decision to purchase Cricket, which was in San Diego, and then put them together, and then hired the team was amazing that led that. But what that drove was a completely nationwide brand for us that was a flanker brand. Today, still being incredibly successful and still a part of AT&T has its own prepaid brand, and obviously Cricket is another. But the whole world of MVNO and the whole world of segments and subsegments is people trying to find a way to continue to evolve the business of wireless and connectivity. And I don't think it's going to stop, honestly. I think that the carriers are stepping back and looking at where I'll call it cracks in that ecosystem. And this is one of those places. And I think what drove a lot of that is the fact that Hans and Verizon bought TracFone. Well, obviously AT&T lost a ton of subscribers. T-Mobile lost a few subscribers. Then you step back and you look at the billions of revenue you lost, and you got to go do something about it. You got to go replace it. And the key, obviously, to the whole MVNO world is called incrementality. Now, right? You go do business with somebody so they bring you new customers, not take your own. And that's a big part of how the teams, what the carriers think when they go make those decisions.
So if I can, I'd love to go off script for just a moment, because you're onto something here that's really interesting. The $1 billion deal T-Mobile did of Mint Mobile is an example of that. But across the three major players, there are MVNE outfits that are making it far easier to launch an MVNO than it's ever been. Certainly in the time that you had launched, we're part of Cricket and all the other work.
Absolutely. And by the way, you talk about back in the day doing things differently. Well, the stars have to be aligned. I mean, there needs to be, as you just said, a business model that makes sense.
Right.
And I believe now you've got some big MVNE players who are absolutely fantastic at what they do. Right? They represent one carrier. They never represent more than one, but they're out there bringing it so you can launch I'll call it a mini for just to start, a mini MVNO in a week. I mean, from a back room perspective. Now you got to do the marketing and other things. So I just think these groups are doing very, very well because there's need. There's look, we can talk about, where the world's going, and everyone wants to talk about 6G. Look, 5G, you can do about whatever you need to do. 6G will be better. I got that. But the latencies and everything else. And I think where we're seeing the growth, you brought up earlier, we're seeing the growth in that MVNO space, right? The carrier's churn is at an all-time low on postpaid. Prepaid churn is actually around where postpaid churn was when I retired. I mean, so it's amazing. People are settling in. People are keeping their phones longer. So as you step back from that, and you say to yourself, well, what can I do bundling? Can I bring in fiber and other things? And we're seeing people do that, right? We're seeing Verizon make acquisitions, AT&T make announcements. We're seeing T-Mobile make announcements. And I still believe there's a huge opportunity in IoT. I think, I was fortunate. I started the IoT business in '08. We didn't call it IoT. We called it emerging devices. And my team was amazing. But you're really still in like the third inning if you're a baseball fan. It's still early as to how much revenue and profitability that business will bring.
Do you believe that that's true given the saturation that we have in the U.S. market today? I think it's like 1 point something devices per person here. We're arguably saturated, but you still think there's some opportunity there.
Here's why I do. Because the one thing that we don't talk about is how do you make people's lives better? Right? So if you have a smart house and you have a smart car and you have an iPhone or an Android, and your building where you work is smart and Starbucks is smart, why can't it all talk to each other? And today is disparate. I understand that, but think about your life changing. Think about, think about AI and ML knowing what you're doing. It sees your calendar. It knows what time you get up. And all of a sudden, these are making decisions for you that you've asked it to make. Okay, we're talking about. I'm not getting out into crazy stuff. I'm talking about, hey, I know I've got to go. I got to get in my car and drive to my office. What's the best route? Well, you got to do something, right? That should be automatic. Your car hits the phone. If the car jumps in your car, a phone goes down. Boom, Jim, here's your best route. Jim, are you stopping by Starbucks? You want me to place your regular order? I mean, I'm talking about small things that will add up to big things that will make our lives better. I absolutely believe that we are just at the beginning of that.
Awesome. Thanks, my friend. It's a question that I usually get asked, and I like you. I think there's plenty of opportunity, but I didn't really have that the insight. So I appreciate you.
Let me throw one more thing in, Jim. I also think about emergencies. I think about what happened in Texas. Horrible. But those things. Think about another one that I'm actually working on with a company right now. Fire detection. Not just that the shrubs have grown too high. More about we can see smoke and see a fire if there's somebody watching using satellite technology and IP to know that there's a fire somewhere within minutes. Yeah. LA fire never happens. That's what technology is. So this technology is not only going to make our lives better, but it should make our lives safer.
Agreed. Now, talk about juxtapositions, my friend. 27 years at AT&T, and then you move on to be the CEO of a software company.
Yeah.
I'm not labeling, but it's kind of old guard, new guard. It's sort of that realm of difference. What was it like being in the software world now full time, given the norms and cultures that you brought from AT&T? What was that like?
Look, I give AT&T a lot of credit. I was a Macaw guy, and then I was an AT&T Wireless guy, then I was a Singular guy, and then we're really all of the same company. But I give the current AT&T a lot of credit. Look, they allowed me and others to be very innovative. Allowed us to look at things differently, build things differently. They still do it today. So I throw that out. But I also look across the aisle at what Mike Sievert's done. I look across at what Hunt. They all have their stuff that they do and do well. When I went over, this was a company that I knew well, a company I'd done business with, an executive team I knew well. And my goal was to go over there and have some quick wins. Obviously, a lot of things went down. We've spent a lot of time on RCS. RCS finally, Apple just announced that they're allowing RCS on our phones. Yep. There's a lot of innovation in RCS that'll be coming now. I think we were a little too early for what we were trying to get done. The cloud business, all these different aspects. But it was actually an insane learning experience for me. No matter how you look at it, you got to look at everything learning. And in that case, it was. I'm glad I did it. Did it for 3 years. I learned a ton from it. I even take a lot of that with me to Stormbreaker, where obviously I'm spending most of my time now. But I think people look at execs from large companies and can they actually move over to startups? My answer is yes. It's all dependent on the human being and what they're trying to get accomplished in their careers. And for me, I'll just call it one big learning experience that I take with me every single day. And I also have a lot. It helps me with my founders as well, right? My founders, as we'll talk about, being a founder is a super hard job, and so I spend a lot of time with our founders. That's my favorite part, and helping them think through problems and build businesses and scale and all those fun things.
Well, so real quick, Mark Andreessen wrote a famous blog that was titled, I believe, "Software Eats the World."
Yeah.
Are there lessons learned that, looking back at the time at your time at telcos, that you would say, okay, I see the speed of which software innovation happens, and I can
Yeah.
see how fast that can transform platforms as well.
Right.
Things are different, and because that lends itself very much to your role as a general partner at Stormbreaker, and I'd like to make that bridge.
Yeah, it does. By the way, one of Mark's pupils wrote, "Wireless is eating the world." After that one, right? So Mark did that, and he said he thought wireless was eating the world. Which by the way, I agree with both. Not going to argue with either one of them, but I'd say that I think the comments were timely in the sense of where we're going. Obviously, when you really look at it, everything is just simply sped up. I know everybody wants to talk about AI. Everybody wants to talk about what it's doing, and I'm not going to argue that it's not amazing stuff. I mean, it's going to be better. We're just scratching the surface. But ultimately, any platform that you're going to win with has to solve a problem. I sit and talk to some founders, and they go, "We're AI for this." Well, a lot of the decks I see, the companies I see, say AI all over the deck, but they're not AI. So, a lot of people just want to use buzzwords. We've got what really works in venture is finding one of those cracks in the ecosystem. And by the way, we only invest in the connected ecosystem. That's our focus. We know the ecosystem well, me and my partners. We understand that there are things that the big players aren't going to solve or aren't going to incubate. And when I say big players, I talk about that ecosystem. You got the carriers, of course, but you also have the Qualcomms and the Ericssons and the Nokias, right? You've got the NVIDIAs, who's making, Jensen makes a lot of comments about the wireless world and how it needs to keep up with him, which I think are interesting. But he's very focused on mobility and connectivity. So, I think it's an interesting time. Expectations of a consumer are changing. I would argue with you, Jim, there is no reason in the world why I shouldn't be able to solve any single problem I have on here.
Yeah.
No reason, right?
Yeah.
But you can't. And so that's what I view in the connected ecosystem, AI being first. I view it very much about customer experience, very much about, I hate to say it, still costs $7-8 to call a call center. You know that, right? And for a wireless carrier. Think how much money they could save if no one ever called. So that's part of where I think the early stages will go. There's a lot of discussion about AI in the networks, a lot of discussion about AI at the edge and edge compute, edge cloud, and all those things. And I'm not saying they're not going to happen. I'm saying I think there'll be people very cautious about how that happens for those reasons.
Yeah. Now, Stormbreaker is in a world that's unique. It's its own very established, very successful venture firm. But as you can appreciate, most venture firms tend to shy away from investments that have some dependencies on the telecommunications industry. You guys are all in and clearly stand alone. What gets you really excited? You've talked about some of it, but where do you think maybe some of the other venture firms are getting it wrong? Is it just because they don't understand that world and can't navigate it?
Yeah, I don't think they're getting it wrong. I just don't think they have the knowledge base and the history in our industry. I'm having fun. I ask all the time, why are you working? Or why is this? Or why? I'm having fun. My partners, Saeed and Andy, both have history in our space. Andy's had 2 exits, one in cyber and one in networking. Saeed was a banker in our space, now obviously a venture partner. We want to find innovation at the early stages in connectivity that we can incubate, we can help grow. Fortunately, at 35 years in the industry, I know a few people still that are working in pretty high places. So we use our networks to help these guys. But also, we're finding insane tech, really, really great tech. And you got to help these young people, in most cases they're younger, run their businesses. You know this well, Jim, from your background.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
So we have a platform that we work off of to help them scale their businesses. We've got a wonderful group of venture partners who are all folks, if I start naming names, you'll know who they are, that are inside of our firm helping our companies. We also have an advisory council of people, their names, and they are helping our companies. So I won't call it, that's kind of our secret hack, is that if we have a networking company, we're going to put an next network executive in to help us.
Yeah.
And it's working. And our founders, we're very simple. We will not write a check if we cannot make a difference and be smart money and help them.
Right.
We also, by the way, Jim, do it, as you know, and I've talked about, we do it very respectfully.
Yeah.
Obviously, being a founder is really difficult. And so, we're very proud of what we're doing. We've made 4 investments in our second fund and have more to come. And we're excited about whether we have an IoT company. We've got a few other things in there. We have a silicon company that's doing some amazing things that obviously isn't in China, as you can imagine, with CHIPS Act and all that going on with our government. So we are finding those cracks and helping these individuals be successful.
So you see a lot of pitch decks. You mentioned that earlier, Glenn. What type of technology is really getting you excited right now? You mentioned AI's over everything, and some companies really just aren't doing AI. But as an investor, and for those listening in, what are the technologies that really get you excited?
Look, we look at we have a number of box checks. First and foremost is going to be the team. You know this, Jim. You can have a great team with a good idea and still go make a lot of money. But if you have a great idea and a bad team, you're not making any money. Yeah. So we spend a lot of time with the founding team, understanding their backgrounds, their experiences. Obviously, you're looking at product. We call it true market fit. They're actually in revenue. We do not do any pre-revenue stuff. But what excites me right now, we're seeing a lot of work, obviously IoT, but we're seeing work that's going to be IoT, but really it's using AI and using compute to find and do things. I talked about finding a fire. That's one of the companies we just invested in. That's what they do. Yeah. And they do it really well. And in fact, I have a call with them and some other people right after this call. But more importantly for us, we want to really understand where they fit, how they would fit. We also start with an end in mind. What's the exit look like, right? Are these guys going to go all the way to IPO, which we know is not cool anymore, or are they going to be acquired? So we really sit down with those founders and do it quickly out of respect for them. They're trying to run a business and make sure that we, number one, can help. Number two, we see what the success they've had, and then we go work with them. I think right now you've got a ton of AI stuff, ton of customer care kind of related things that are going to get better. We see a ton of cloud, edge compute, which, by the way, has to get better. You know that well. I know it well. Everybody does. That latency in 5G is great, but you also have to understand what you're taking from the edge and bringing back to the central cloud and back, because the tonnage is so huge, right? You can't run that tonnage over wide area wireless networks. And we also see a lot of secondary networks. We see we've got an investment in a company that is all about rural America, and being able to bring faster speeds using technology and mesh networks in a very inexpensive way. They're doing incredibly well also. So we're looking for those opportunities, and we're looking under every rock. We're fortunate. People know about us. A lot of founders know, and we're seeing 40 to 50 companies a week. Not all fit, but we're able to look at a lot that's happening out there and where the trends are.
Fantastic. And you've peppered this in some of your comments, my friend, but as a last question, what advice would you give to founders in this space?
Look, I think founders in this space need to find smart money. They need to find people that are going to walk in and help you. Right? Just getting money doesn't solve, right? That's old school venture. You need someone who, that are going to bring value to you, whether it's their network, whether it's who to hire, whether it's how to run your business. But specifically, if you're trying to sell into a carrier or one of the larger companies, you're going to need somebody who can help you get in, somebody who can make an introduction. But I'll tell you, like I said earlier, being a founder is hard. Good venture people understand that. They want to support it, and they want to make it easier for you to be successful.
Right. Not just the money, but actually be in the boat with you and see you through to success. Glenn, as always, my friend, thank you for a fantastic, inspiring session. We really, really appreciate it. From launching the iPhone era to leading AT&T through its IoT and mobility and MVNO business, Glenn has been investing in the future of our connected world, and his journey spans the most pivotal inflection points in telecom. A huge thank you again, Glenn, for sharing your insights and wisdom with us today. We really appreciate it. If you're listening, and you're wanting to build and share your insight. Sorry, if you're listening with us today and looking at the next wave of connectivity, you should not look any further than Stormbreakers. Please reach out.
Thank
We'd
you.
love to have
Right
you
here.
get connected. Absolutely. So don't forget to subscribe to our next issue. Leave us a review. Tell us how we did today. And again, Glenn, thank you again for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course.